So with Girls on Film, when we work with partnerships, it's always on films that we like already. So that's always, that's it has to be the case. We would turn someone down if we don't like the film and it's not right for us. But I fear that there's a bit of a commercialization of those kind of ravey YouTube, and some of the poster quotes that come out of that.
So, Anna, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, well, this is one I've been looking forward to because, I follow your podcast. I've sort of seen your background. I see lots of different things. So I'm very excited to dig in.
Great, let's do it.
Let's do it. So I want to start with, you're a journalist.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I saw that you studied journalism. And so you started in dance magazines. And then I love this line, you were working for Minx, which
Yeah.
was a magazine for girls who don't like magazines.
Yeah, it was a kind of I think feisty is an overused word, but it was, a little bit more interesting and complex and fun than other women's magazines at the time. And it really was actually for young adults, I suppose. So people, I certainly it was what I read. And when I was looking for a job, I literally just phoned them up and said, "Who's your assistant editor?" And they said, "Oh, we're recruiting." I was like, "Great." I got the job. So it was just right up my street, just offering something a bit more different and little elements of feminism in there as well, I would say. So yeah, Minx was a good grounding for me in magazines. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and that spoke to me as well because I'm definitely a girl who doesn't like would normally buy those kind of magazines. So I
Exactly.
love that you've sort of that got that start there.
Yeah.
And then obviously the whole feminist lens. Is that something that's always been part of your studies, your world, or is it something that emerged from your experiences?
I think I've always felt strongly about it innately, but certainly at university, I had the opportunity to develop my knowledge of it in English literature and also in a course I did called Gender and Popular Culture, which was really interesting. It was an option that we did in my English degree, and we were looking at adverts and films and TV shows through a feminist lens. And it really, I think, when I think back, that probably laid the groundwork of a lot of the work that I do now because we analysed films as different as Thelma and Louise and Basic Instinct, which were both coming out at the same time. And it was so fascinating to kind of really dissect those and look at it through a female lens with great tutors. So I think that really turned me on to it. But I was always going to, whenever I could, go into sort of lectures about gender and language and that kind of thing. I was always fascinated in what little I could glean, in my sort of late teens and early 20s about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so moving into the journalism side of things, how did you approach sort of working for some of the big guys that you worked for, keeping your voice and keeping what you want to say?
Well, when I was at Minx, I started writing film reviews, and it was then that I realized that's what I wanted to do. So when Minx sadly folded, because the world wasn't ready for it, then I had the opportunity to write for titles such as Empire, Time Out, Sight and Sound. I say opportunity. I worked very hard to get those opportunities
Yeah.
because knocking on doors had to be done, and a lot of proving myself. So how I approach keeping my voice, I think I found it. I think, as a film critic personally, you're always evolving. And when I went to journalism school, interestingly, we were sort of told not to put our own thumbprint or our opinion on things because it was a much more kind of newsy element. So I had to really learn and adjust and to keep my authentic voice, which I very much used at Minx.
Mm.
And I think I did retain it in, the likes of Empire. I was encouraged, the whole point of film criticism is your opinion, and I was encouraged to do that. But I think what was interesting is that initially I wasn't always given a great range of films to review. I think there maybe is some unconscious bias sometimes, certainly in the sort of early noughties, the idea that women might be more suited to writing about certain types of films, or maybe it's that the staff were mostly male, so they thought, here's a rom-com, let's give it to Anna.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, so I did a lot of children's films and a lot of rom-coms to start out with. So I definitely became a bit of, I suppose, an authority on those, and that's helpful and good. But how great when my editor started saying, here's an action movie, here's a sci-fi, recognizing that of course, yeah, I can write about anything.
Yeah. When did you feel that change and sort of you being given a wider breadth of titles?
I think it was about proving myself really, and also getting to know people better, and also not being afraid to say,
Mm.
actually love sci-fi, and people go, "Oh, you know, you never said. I didn't know." You know, so actually, you got to put yourself forward for these things. And so it was a combination, I think. But it definitely, the more established I became, the more options I had, and the more trust I suppose that editors had in me, and that they knew that I could handle anything.
Yeah. And how did you find it sort of for you as a woman in a very male-dominated space?
Well, interestingly, I think when I started off being a production editor at the Empire One Shots, the editor was a woman. So there,
Okay.
you know, it wasn't entirely, it certainly was a majority of men, but there were some great women doing important work. But yeah, I think at one point I may have been the only woman writing for Sight and Sound, for example, which is crazy now. And I'm happy to say that is far from the case now. There are so
Yeah.
many, which is brilliant. How did I find it? Yeah, again, I mean, it was interesting that often I would be the only woman in a screening room as well. And I think what I love now is that myself and other female film critics, I think there's less judgment and bias against us in terms of just being free to pick out the shades in a film that interest us. You know, I do feel more confident taking a feminist angle in a mainstream review now than I probably would have been then. It would have been probably a smaller part of my review then, but now I can lead with that, and it's accepted as very much an angle. I mean, Sight and Sound, hats off, always let me go with that angle because that is a very, you know, erudite publication that likes to do a deep dive. So, and that was a natural kind of slightly more academic approach. But I think in the mainstream, it has shifted a bit, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to see also me as a reader and avidly reading those kind of things. I'm like, okay, great. Now we can, as you said, lead with those kind of things. And it's more interesting. It really is. It
And
leads,
it's also about sort of I think there's slightly less snobbery now as well in terms of, you know, the film canon, and you know, and people actually taking a serious analysis of rom-coms seriously, you know, because that
yeah.
can be done. You know, all film is art, and I think again that's shifted a bit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, with all the streaming platforms as well, there's Netflix and there's everything, and there's so much for everybody to watch. I was always the one who went to sort of the art house cinema and saw, maybe films that my friends were like, those are weird. But now they're a lot more open, like commonplace, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating that I started when I started journalism, there was no internet, and you know, to think how much things have changed and how my job is certainly more varied and possible thanks to the internet and thanks to streaming services, but also how streaming services have informed people's viewing choices, or at least given them so much choice and the possibility to take a risk.
Yeah.
You know, people might never have gone to pay to see a documentary in the cinema, but they might watch it on a streaming service and really learn something and then fall in love with documentaries. And then in my dreams, hopefully go and see it on the big screen as well, because I'm a big fan of supporting the big screen
Oh, we
experience.
have to.
And I love that, you know, the streaming services and the big screen can live in tandem and even support each other in the best possible world. And that's kind of my hope.
Yeah. And I think we are sort of moving towards that. I think there's always, and after COVID as well, there was a big fear of cinema, and everyone was just streaming. But I know I've been seeing sort of trends, and now that film festivals and people are getting back to that kind of thing, which is really refreshing.
Definitely. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked to go on the TV or radio because I do a lot of punditry,
Mm.
but I've been asked to go on the TV or radio talking about the death of the cinema, the death of the big screen. You know, there's constantly something that people are jumping on. But actually, I think, I mean, TV didn't kill radio, did it? You know, these things can live together, I hope.
Yeah, I hope too. And I think we just need to see the time. We just need to see sort of how that evolves.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know it's not easy, and I'm not making light of it because I know obviously anyone that works in exhibition, in distribution, it is really, and production, it's really, really hard out there. It's not easy at all. But in terms of audiences and audiences' receptiveness,
Mm.
my hope is that we will continue to enjoy films in all that shapes and
Yeah.
forms.
Yeah. There's hope for cinema yet.
Yes.
So then now I want to move on to podcasting.
Mm.
Girls on film. Did you see a gap in the market, or did you just always had a burning desire to set up a podcast?
Well, I thought of the name and the concept Girls on Film before podcasts even existed. It was back in 2000, and I wanted to do a TV show with women talking to each other about film because that was just something you didn't really see enough of. And as I was getting asked to do more and more TV, I was often paired with a man, but very rarely with a female presenter. And there was this sort of concept, I think, that two women talking with each other about film is about something very niche. Um, so I wanted to make it into Girls on Film as a TV show, not just to talk about representation on screen, but also to show that women talking with each other about film is just entertaining for anyone. And they just might have a slightly different spin on it depending on your background. And I shared this with my agent, who's also a producer, Hedda Lawney Archbold, and she suggested turning it into a podcast when nobody wanted to pick it up as a TV show. And hey presto, it did really well. We just started to try to float it in 2018 and just to do a few episodes and see if it went okay. And then by episode 3, we had Kerry Mulligan, Andrea Riseborough coming on. And the interest, not just from other film critics who wanted to come on, but from women in the industry and some great male allies as well, was just huge. And it continues to be. We're turning people down. We're so lucky to have people so keen to come on Girls on Film. We're now 195 episodes down. So
Brilliant.
yeah.
It's amazing. Your backlog is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been subscribed to it for ages, and then I was just refreshing while I was looking at the interview, and yeah, it's brilliant. And you've got a great interview style, which I think people really engage with.
Thank you. I love it because I always loved doing radio and I loved, feminism and I loved films. And so this just brings it all together. And yeah, and connecting with people, I think that's one of the greatest joys of it for me is to talking to filmmakers, whether, they're practitioners for, whether they're in front of or behind the camera and talking to them and maybe drawing something a little bit different out of them and having a really honest chat. Which episodes have you enjoyed in
So
particular?
I was listening to your Glasgow Film Festival
Yeah,
episode because
great,
that's a festival that I really respect and enjoy. I love the coverage there. And then I listened to your latest one that you did at Cannes.
great.
One of the first ones was live in Cannes, wasn't it?
It was, that's right. Yeah, we I can't believe that happened so soon, really. That it was quite swishy. Oh, we've arrived in Cannes. And we did it at the UK Film Centre. And that was a lovely way to start bringing the podcast to industry audiences. And at the same time, we were also doing live shows at home in Manchester every other month. So
Love home.
yeah, it's such a great cinema, and we really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. So, live before lockdown, live episodes were quite a big part of Girls on Film, and I love that we were doing them at festivals to India's industry audiences, and then in cinemas just to film fans. And that remains our audience is a real mixture of both. We're very well known in the UK film industry and
Yeah.
abroad, but we have listeners all over the world who just love hearing a different take on film.
Yeah. So how do you sort of approach the different ones? So be it a live one with an industry, do you do them with an audience? How do you set up all the filming and everything?
Well, we're mostly audio. We don't do visual ones apart from in lockdown. We did some on YouTube with the BFI, and that was great. They were very produced, and that was a lot of zooming as we're doing now.
Yeah.
Um, but normally our MO is we either record on Zoom we'd be talking like now, but we won't film it. It's just audio.
Mm.
Um, and then if we do a live show, it will either be, as I say, with an industry audience at a film festival. So it will be delegates can come along, people can buy tickets or get tickets for free. And again, if it's now we are doing more where we have what I would call a Girls on Film community. So we
Okay.
have a newsletter that anyone can sign up to, and if it's in the show notes of each podcast, and it is mostly London, but we're trying to do more outside of London for obvious reasons. But we do get the chance to work in partnership with distributors for great films that really fit our brand. And then we invite our community along to see the film and then maybe have a discussion about it afterwards over drinks. And that works really well for us. We did one with the women of Mission Impossible in partnership with Paramount recently. And having Angela Bassett and Pom Clementieff on stage was just wonderful. And then our network all gets to meet each other and connect and talk as well. And there I met film industry people, but I met teachers. Yeah, I met registrars, people that say they love the pod. And I just really like that people are finding out more about the industry from all sides through us and building a community and an annual awards ceremony as well.
Yeah, your awards are a bit, they've really grown, haven't they?
They really have. It was, we started off in the gorgeous Garden Cinema, which is
Yeah.
beautiful, but we've sort of outgrown that, and we had the last one at the Curse in Bloomsbury, and yeah, it was fantastic. People are more and more people coming to accept their awards in person, from across the world, and it's becoming yeah quite a staple of the awards scene. So yeah, it's really exciting.
How do you position yourself? Because obviously there's so many incredible award ceremonies and
Mm.
some are very industry focused, some are more sort of audience focused. How do you position yourself and how do you make yourself stand apart as well?
Well, I think it all comes just from a very sincere place. I don't think we were ever sort of thinking, "Ooh, we want to be this key date in the awards season and we want to compete with this, that, and the other." We just are girls on film. We're supporting women in film and the allies who support women and talking about representation on screen, and everything's very connected to the podcast. A lot of the winners have, are people, the nominees that are people that have been on the podcast, and that's they're voted for by film critics, many of whom are not connected directly with us, so that's an objective viewpoint, but at the same time there is that synergy between, I think, like, for example, some of the undersung films that by women in particular is what I'm proud of. And that's why I think Deadline were really happy to partner with us as a media partner, for example, because we're shining a light on films that maybe other awards ceremonies might be overlooking. Not in all cases, of course, The Substance did well at ours and other ceremonies last year, but then there are others that we're so proud to have lifted up and to shone a light on. And hopefully that then really does encourage more people to see them, and again builds our community. Women come to our awards and they end up working together, some of them even ever sharing flats together. I've heard about lovely stories, and people say that they've actually been inspired by our awards and by Girls on Film to make films that then go on to be in LFF, and it's just that lovely synergy. But yeah, I don't think I've summed up very succinctly what's different about our awards, but I hope that was interesting.
No, no, it is. And so how do your nominations come through? Are they people who've been on the podcast?
So no, it's any our first year we would said anyone who's featured, any of the films that featured, but now it's any female centered film of the past 12 months. So yeah, in the awards season calendar basically. And most of our awards do go to, most of the nominations are films with female directors or writer directors, but then we do have the Ally Award where it's a male director who we say, well done, you've done a great film about a woman. um but also we're really proud to have craft categories. So we've got all this female or non-binary cinematographer, for example. We'd love to expand those categories. If anyone wants to sponsor them, please let us know. That's the only reason we haven't done more of those categories. It's just financial. So we would really love to do more craft categories and to work with people on that.
Yeah. How do you find sponsorship and that whole complex world? Because it's a big one to dig into.
It really is. Well, we have a small dedicated team, and we're all working on other things, but myself and Hedda and Charlotte at the moment, but also many wonderful interns and junior producers have worked with us before. But to be honest, what it normally comes from is people you've personally met and connections. As you know, that's the
Yeah.
very best way. And we've started having parties in Cannes every year, and I think the people that come to our parties that come in Cannes, the people that come to our awards, people that come to our events, those are the people we often end up partnering with and working with because they can see firsthand the magic in the room, quite frankly. And it's everyone. I'm not crediting us necessarily. It's just what's been created by Girls on Film, and it's really special. And I think increasingly a lot of brands want to be a part of that, which is brilliant.
Yeah. No, I did. Yeah, it is. And it's the community. And that's what I think you've fostered so well. And sort of researching what you've done and going through your social channels and all of that. There's just everyone, seems so positive about it,
Yeah,
which,
I really like that. Yeah, because I mean, we increasingly felt that we wanted to have a positive note to the podcast because I think actually it was pre-lockdown. We were, as obviously I'm a film critic, and we did a very popular episode on that was quite critical about Christopher Nolan's approach to female characters, for example, and that is interesting. But increasingly, our audiences were saying we want you just to celebrate the wins. We
Mm.
want just to say, okay, this has been a problem in the past, but how wonderful that we now have X female directors nominated for X. So, it's identifying the problems, but celebrating the wins more than that. And I think that positive attitude, and also my naturally sort of quite cheery attitude, comes across, and also the warmth that I think we share with our community and our guests. And it's very rare that a director or a writer comes on a podcast and doesn't end up becoming a friend, because especially if they're based in London, then we all just end up hanging out and just, yeah, creating great work, I hope.
Yeah, no, you do. Because I mean, we here at Director's Notes, I find that as well. Because sometimes you're interviewing people and you're speaking to them over email, but then it's lovely you bump into them at festivals or see them at other awards, and you're like, I feel like I know them, and I'm like, we've only just emailed and we're on Instagram, but I feel like I know you, and I love that side of it.
Well done. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's yeah, it's fostering those relationships, as you said, which then grow. And so I'd love to know about Cannes and how you've expanded your influence and your side of things there.
Well, I've been going for quite a few years before we launched Girls on Film, so that was quite helpful that I sort of knew the lay of the land. I was sort of familiar with how everything worked there, and obviously I know a lot of people who go, whether they're film critics or filmmakers. I think a key thing for us with Cannes was to reach a more international industry audience, and I found that really, really fruitful. Because yeah, I mean, I hope most people in the UK film industry know who we are, but often, the other countries they might not be so familiar, even though, as I say, we do have listeners around the world. But yeah, so I think it's been really great to connect with filmmakers. And we work with the Members Club with Jojo Diet, and she has this gorgeous venue on the beach. I mean, I pinch myself, 2 years running, looking out onto the beach, glass of rosé, glistening sea and sand, but surrounded by just so much love from these incredible people in the industry who've all shown up for us, all made time in their very busy Cannes diaries to come along. And we were in Hello magazine this year, don't you know?
I did. I saw that. That was amazing.
So,
Must
and I
have
think
felt
that's
like,
great, to reach mainstream publications, that helps get our message across, right? So it's brilliant. Yeah.
yeah. And do you think the growth is happening internationally and you're reaching more audiences?
I think so. I mean, I always welcome people to spread the word as much as possible because there's so many podcasts out there. I
Yeah.
think it's hard to get people to actually listen sometimes, but I think we have very, very loyal people that do listen, and I love seeing like after we had Eliza Scanlon on the podcast, I look at the sort of map of the territories where people are listening, and Australia starts shooting up, and then the word spreads in Australia, and more Australians start listening to Girls on Film. So yeah, it is a slow grow and growth, and I think what I really am excited about is that just the name and the platform as a community is becoming so well known. Even if people don't necessarily listen to the podcast, they go to some of the events or they know who we are, and there's a certain amount of respect there, which is
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Then obviously people link out to you and they see what you do with the film criticism, and then it's this great sort of media package.
I like it. Yeah, and it's been nothing but great for my work in general because obviously I launched it at a time when actually things weren't so great in terms of print and advertising and reviews, and work for journalists in general, as many people know, was sort of going down, and it was much harder to kind of get paid work as a film critic in print. That was going down. So how wonderful then to have this extra string to my bow, which we've now managed to, well, we're managing to sort of monetize. Yeah, we could always use more, but we're managing to sort of pay people
Yeah.
and get results. And it's very exciting for me because it's also a chance to prove myself as a broadcaster and as an onstage host, something I do a lot of anyway, but it's no harm. It's like an online CV. Anyone who might want to host, hire me to host something, they just have to list Girls on Film. They go, okay, yeah, maybe she's right, maybe she's wrong, but they can find out what I'm like by listening to it very easily.
Yeah, yeah. And it's sort of going back to what you said earlier. It's your voice, it's your
Yeah.
opinion, and that's what people want to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It is a very personal thing, and I think that's one of the most exciting things for me is that you're talking about finding your voice, but I can be my utterly myself. On Girls on Film, it is just me, and if people say they like it, that just means so much.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask about this is something that I've been thinking about that social media is so huge. Everyone's on Letterboxd, everyone's writing their little reviews.
Yes.
How do you see it changing for people like you know, who are established and been in the industry for ages?
It's quite an interesting one because, on the one hand, I think a lot of film critics feel a little bit threatened, by, well, not threatened, but they just feel like it's encroaching on our territory. I'm not speaking for everyone, but I've heard it voiced, that obviously, that kind of everyone's a critic idea. But on the other hand, I kind of love what Letterboxd is doing because it's encouraging people to be very thoughtful about film, to really probably amass quite a lot of knowledge about film. And I think platforms like that seem to be working quite well for quite thoughtful audiences. What I'm not a huge fan of necessarily is if people are kind of on the promotion for films and not being transparent about the fact that it's an ad, and perhaps altering their opinion for some kind of YouTube reviews and that sort of thing, and then that way, and then there's a very blurry line between criticism and promotion, and and then how do viewers and how do listeners distinguish between that.
Yeah,
So with Girls on Film, when we work with partnerships, it's always on films that we like already. So that's always, that's it has to be the case. We would turn someone down if we don't like the film and it's not right for us. But I fear that there's a bit of a commercialization of those kind of ravey YouTube, and some of the poster quotes that come out of that. So I think that can be misleading for audiences, which is who the most important thing is that they need to know where to go for the truth and for an honest opinion. And I
yeah,
think so there is still a great deal of value for criticism in that.
yeah. And then there's also a struggle because you work with some very big sponsors. You know, you've had Netflix, you've had IMDb. How do you maintain that you're being honest to what you want to be saying and what you want to be supporting?
What surprises people sometimes, and what I love, is that we've never had any interference from any distributor who we've worked with to say, can you not say this? Can you say that? No one needs to listen to it before it goes out, apart from us.
Yeah,
It's absolutely our opinion, and they trust us. It's really wonderful, and I wouldn't change my opinion or alter something, and I think they know that. But that again, it's always that open conversation where, like, look, Anna, you see the film, and then if you like it, then we'll talk, and then there's no editorial interference. We have complete editorial control. We just work with wonderful distributors, and we're so lucky to work with them, because that way we wouldn't be able to afford to talk about other films who can't afford it. So we really, that's how we can survive. Um, and IMDb have always been just wonderful, great supports, from the beginning, and they just happy to see us thriving. So yeah,
it's a
it's really,
symbiotic relationship.
yeah, it is. And I think what's really nice is that people are now starting to, if they've got the budget, they're starting to work Girls on Film into their marketing plan, and contacting us so that I have the opportunity to see it nice and early, so that then we can decide if it's one that we want to work with in partnership. So
Yeah,
yeah, I have been really heartened by how much trust is placed in us, and also, yeah, I mean, and also because I used to be the president of the Critics Circle before all this happened. So I think the publicists know, and distributors know me, and I think that's it. They know that they have that faith that it will be fair and true to my standards, which are very high.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and that, like you said, that's the work that you've put in, and
Yeah.
that's where it all comes from. Do you worry about yourself? I mean, obviously, with you being, you know, supporting women, and not worry, that's the wrong word, but that people pinhole you.
Right. There have been times where I felt that I might sort of point out, I can interview men too. This
Yeah,
can happen if it's the Q&As. Now, of course, I think I often benefit when people think, oh, let's get a female host for this female-driven film. But then, there's other times I've been talking to people, and they're like, oh yeah, maybe yes, yes, of course, it would actually be quite interesting to have a woman talking about this very masculine film with all these men on stage. So yeah, it's just about making sure people know that I do have broad interests. I mean, I also write regularly for Rolling Stone UK, which obviously has a lot of men that read it, and so I watch everything I can,
yeah,
um, and continue to write about everything that I can. So. but yeah, I don't think there's any worries about being pigeonholed particularly. I just need to make sure that I remind people, as we were saying right back at the beginning, as to the breadth of my interests in film. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can cover sort of everything because yeah, I think there is a worry and sometimes you get put into a certain place and they're like, that's where you are.
Well, I think if it was a place where there wasn't much work or much interest in it, or people had a poor view of it, that would be a problem. But happily, most people, well, perhaps, maybe I don't know about it if there are people that don't, but most people in the industry are looking to support women in film. A lot are anyway, and are looking to put their money where their mouth is and to make sure that there is good representation in the panels that they do
Yeah.
and good conversations about diversity on screen. And again, that's something we talk about a lot on Girls on Film, and that we strive for ourselves when we have panels. So yeah, I think if I'm pigeonholed as the one as the feminist who talks about representation from an informed perspective, then that's okay.
There's worse things to be. How have you positively seen the industry change in terms of those conversations on diversity and panels and, your involvement and your community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an ongoing fight really, and I think the conversations are definitely getting louder, and there's a lot more talk, and there are a lot more discussions, both publicly and behind closed doors, I think, about making sure that all different voices are heard. But there is a very long way to go, especially when it comes to conditions in the film industry and things that I am not privy to, but things I get wind of.
Mm,
But certainly now, I think it's become much more normal. For example, if I'd have gone on, Sky News, 10 years ago, talking about female directors and feminism, it probably might have been seen as quite niche. But now the presenters are asking me those questions.
yeah,
They are, whether they're men or women, they are asking me those questions, and they're saying, "Oh, how come no female directors were nominated this year? What's that about? Is that a problem?" And how great is that, that is part of the mainstream conversation now. And I think that is really, really important.
yeah. A lot more people seem to be aware of it now.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure that there's some people just do box ticking exercises and don't care. But at least people are being held accountable more. And what I love to see is now that we're seeing a lot more films where there are characters who might have been classed by their sexuality, by their gender, by their color, by their disability. That they in previous kind of mainstream movies, they might that it would have all been about that. But now there are increasing number, I think, of mainstream films where there are people whose sexuality is just a part of their personality, and it's not even mentioned, it's not even referred to, it's never a problem. That is just part of the many facets of their character. And that's the kind of film, in TV landscape I want to see, where and I know a lot of the LGBT listeners we have on Girls on Film feel similarly, because they're just sick of seeing these sort of gay tragedies. We want to see, women celebrated in all their various sexualities, and but in really positive stories that are made more complex than that, and don't just focus on that.
100%. I've had the exact same conversation with a lot of people. And I do, some programming and for an LGBTQ program recently. I made sure that every film, it wasn't a coming out film. It wasn't, oh, this is sad. It wasn't tragic. It was a film about people who happen to be gay. And the narratives are all different and they're all funny. But that was almost a bit of a struggle to find those films which I was disappointed about. But just hearing you say that is because that's the exact same conversations I have with people.
Interesting, and I do think that is changing fairly rapidly.
Yeah.
For example, this week I was hosting a big Q&A for Echo Valley, the new thriller on Apple TV Plus, and Julianne Moore's character, part of her backstory is that she fell in love with a woman, and therefore, and she also has, a gay friend played by Fiona Shaw. That's just presented as part of her story. you know, and there are many, many other things going on in the film. It's not the focus of the film. And that's, you know, that's a male director, Michael Pearce. And I just think, great, you know, that is just part and parcel, and as it should be, completely normal and nothing to get excited or shocked about. It
Yeah.
just is what it is. But it's been a long time coming because so often, you know, it was, you know, because of the way the world you know, it was treated like it was some big drama.
Yeah. And audiences will definitely know that as well. They'll be watching films and they'll be like, oh, great, this isn't, what I'm used to seeing. This is something that I didn't even realize it. And then it's you kind of noticing in your mind that you didn't realize that that was the main theme.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's why I love having conversations about that on Girls on Film, because when you can sort of hear everyone, the cogs of people's minds turning and going, oh gosh, yeah, I've never seen that before or done that way before. And the reason is this, and this. And why do you think that is? And yeah, just it's just fascinating unpicking the changing world we live in very, very rapidly in some ways, in terms of the way we use language and the way we talk about things in, you know, what some people might call woke culture, which you know, I occasionally get accused of being part of. But I think it's generally a pejorative term. But yeah, I mean that being more aware of language and how we use language to describe things to avoid offending people is becoming a huge part of our society, which wasn't the case, you know, when I started journalism at all. So it's very interesting to see the effect that's having on discussions around TV and film.
Yeah. And I think we have to credit Gen Z for that. Um,
Yeah,
a lot of people criticize them, but I like it. I'm like, yeah, tell me off for saying that. Or if
completely.
I said something wrong or whatever, tell me off.
Me too, and I'm always learning, and I love the fact that we have, you know, quite a lot of younger members of staff and young interns come in, and that's part of their job. I'm like, please call me up on it because I don't inherently know, and that's
Yeah.
okay because I'm a different generation to you, and you know, you can pull someone up on something without getting angry, because I know because the people older than me, I get, you know, they say might say something offends me, and so it works all those different ways, and you know, there's a difference between you being really offensive and then being accidentally, you know, using the wrong terminology, and it's up to us all to converse about it and make sure everyone's comfortable and make sure we all alter our behavior for a more harmonious world.
Of course. And often, if you're not told that you're saying something wrong, you're unaware, um,
Agreed. Yeah.
not through any kind of malice. It's
Yeah.
that's what you're used to. So, yeah, I find it
Yeah.
fascinating.
And I really welcome that feedback because obviously I am a certain generation, and if I'm going to have a podcast talking about these things, it's really important that I'm up to speed. So always
Yeah,
tell me people. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, looking at the podcast, what have you got coming up that you're excited about that we can look forward to?
Oh, we're going to be live on stage at Latitude Festival, which we've been doing every year, which I love. As I love music festivals, I love arts festivals, and Latitude's a great one. And I think we're going to have Priya Kansara, Jane Horrocks, and Romola Garai on, and possibly one other special guest. So it'll be a really fun sort of panel, of almost like a sort of chat show style panel. You know, really amazing women chatting with me and with each other on stage. So you can see that. I think that's going to be on the Friday at Latitude, but that will be announced soon in terms of what when we're on. I think we're going to be back at Evolution Mallorca Film Festival, which is always a treat in October. So if you happen to be out in Spain, then come and see us. We'll be doing a live show. And we are always looking for partnerships and for, you know, people that want to work with us for events. Meantime, we'll be doing new episodes talking about current releases. I'm also going to the Mediterranean Film Festival in Malta, so I'm going to see what they've got going on in terms of women in film. So
Yeah.
yeah, plenty. Yeah.
And for film festivals, I always find this interesting. And I'm always looking for film festivals who have women-only programs, who champion those. Who are sort of your favorites? Who would you go to in terms of their representation and diversity?
Oh, that is a really tough one. I wouldn't. I would feel bad singling people out because I think
Fair
so many
enough.
places do have a really good go at it. And you know, I mean, we worked with IFFR in Rotterdam before, and that I found, you know, they do great work, but also, of course, London Film Festival, you know, Edinburgh Film Festival. But I don't go to absolutely all of them because I
It's
quite like
impossible.
I, I quite like working in London as well. And it is impossible. Yeah. I mean, some people just, their feet barely touches the ground, doesn't it? You know, if they go to all the film festivals. So, but again, it's one of those things that I think more effort's going into it. And if anyone's watching that is doing great work, do reach out because we'd love to know about it on the podcast.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you. I've got a brilliant sort of overview of everything and what you're growing and what you're doing, and I've got a lot of love and respect for it.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to speak to you and to hear how much you enjoy my work. And, congrats on what you do as well. You're bringing people together, which is really important in our industry.
It is. It is. And putting films in front of them that they might not watch, which is part of it as well.
Absolutely brilliant. Nice one.